بلغنا اللهم المؤمن به شخصنا واصحب به صدقنا وارتق به فدقنا وكسر به قلتنا وأعزز به ذلتنا وأغني به عائلنا واخذ به عن مكرمنا واجبر به فقرنا وسد به خلتنا ويسر به أسرنا وبيض به وجوهنا وفك به أسرنا وأنجز به تلبتنا وأنجز به مواعيدنا واستجب به دعوتنا وأعطنا به سؤلنا وبلغنا به من الدنيا والآخرة آمالنا وأعطنا به فوق رغبتنا يا خير المسؤولين وأوسع المعطين اشف به صدورنا وأصحب به غيظ قلوبنا وعدنا به لما اختلف فيه من الحق بإذنك إنك تعدي من تشاء إلى صراط مستقيم وانصرنا به على عدوك وعدونا إله الحق آمين اللهم إنا نشكو إليك فقد نبينا وصلواتك عليه وآله وغيبة ولينا وكسرة عدونا وقلة أعدادنا وشدة الفتن بنا وتزاهر الزمان علينا فصل على محمد وآله وإن على ذلك بفتح منك تعجل وبزر تكشفوه ونصر تعزه وسلطان حق تظهر ورحمة منك تجللناها وعافية منك تلبسناها برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. أعوذ بجلال وجهك الكريم أعوذ بجلال وجهك الكريم أن ينقضي عني شهر رمضان أو يدلو الفجر من ليلة هذه ولك قبلي طبيعة أو ذنب تعذبني علي.
Bismillah. In the name of Allah, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, all praise be to Rasul Pak sallallahu alayhi salam and the Ahl Bayt alayhi salam. For Muhammad wa ali Muhammad salawat. I'd like to thank today's sponsors, the families of Hassan Naqvi, Aliza Naqvi, Dr. Nida Naqvi, as well as Sayyid Ali Hassan Abdi and Feroza Hassan. If you could please recite Surah Fatiha for Kul Marhum and their Marhum, Bil Khusus, Sayyid Bakir Hussain Abdi, Habib Fatima, Sayyid Ahmad Ali Naqvi, Surya Begum, Roshan Fatima binte Sayyid Munawwar Hussain Rizvi, Sayyid Ghadir Hussain Naqvi, Ibn Sayyid Ali Naqi Naqvi, Feroza Jahan binte Sayyid Ghadir Hussain Naqvi, Sayyid Hassan Mehdi Ibn Sayyid Ghadir Hussain Naqvi, Kaisar Begum binte Moulana Syed Agha Mehdi Lakhnavi, Sayyid Muhammad Sabtain Naqvi Ibn Sayyid Muhammad Ibrahim Naqvi, Salina Momin binte Altaf Hussain. Bismillah ar-Rahman. We'd like to please urge everyone to join us in giving Pursa tomorrow to Bibi Khatija Salamunna alayhi, Bar Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad Salawat. As you've noticed, the first 14 lectures have been recited by Moulana Syed Ali Haider Abdi, and inshallah Majlis tomorrow will also be recited by Moulana Saab. Inshallah Nokhani will be recited by Misam Abbas, as well as Anjuman Dar Hussain. So please join us. Without further ado, I'd like to invite Moulana to the member. Muhammad wa ali Muhammad salawat. Nare takbir, nare risalat, nare Haidari. Bari digar nare salawat.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف أنبياء المرسلين حبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم مصطفى محمد صلوات اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعلى أهل بيت الطيبين الطاهرين. I begin in the name of Allah, the most beneficent and the most merciful, the one who has bestowed upon us countless favors, and the best of them all, the mercy to mankind, Muhammad al-Mustafa, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad, wa ali Muhammad, and his blessed family, the holy Ahlul Bayt. So let us start by sending our peace and blessings upon Rasulullah and Ahlul Bayt, and especially the master of our time, Imam Sahib al-Asr wa Zaman, Ajalallah Ta'ala, Farash Sharif. Dear brothers, dear sisters, dear elders and youth of the community, Assalamu alaikum, and welcome again to another night of mercy in the holy month of Shahr Ramadan. Today I would like to start with an ayah from the Quran in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about a certain type of people. In Surah Al-Araf, verse 179, He says, they have hearts, but they cannot understand. They have eyes, but they cannot see. They have ears, but they cannot hear. They are like cattle. Rather, they are worse. They are those who are heedless. What is heedlessness? Ghafla. And this verse translates into what we're going to discuss today. And we're going to continue the will of Imam Ali alayhi salam, Amir al-Mu'mineen, the key, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad, in which he states and tells us to work for the next world. And in order to work for the next world, we have to understand how is it that we can live in this world and at the same time work for the next world. And in order to do that, we have to avoid heedlessness and avoid what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was talking about in the Quran. Who are they who have eyes but they cannot see? What does he mean? He means they have eyes but they cannot see the truth. They have hearts but they cannot understand the truth with their hearts because their hearts have become blinded by falsehood, by worldly desires, by diseases of the soul. And they have ears. They hear the truth, but it does not reach them. A few days ago, I talked about what Imam Hussain alayhi salam had, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. He called out multiple times on the day of Ashura to the army of Yazid, do you not know that I am the son of the daughter of your prophet? Multiple times, but they heard it, but did not understand it. This is what happens when people enter a state which is known as ghafla. And ghafla, it is heedlessness. And what does that mean? They have many translations, but simply put, ghafla is what distracts you from the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and your purpose in life. That is the best definition of ghafla that you can understand. And this today in this world is very common. And it's happening every day in our life. People are just running through life on autopilot. Many people, as you drive a car, you put on autopilot, you just put in your maps and you get to your destination. You don't know what direction you took, what you did. You just know how you got there at the end. People's lives are running like this right now on autopilot. And this is what the world has made us do. But you have to be aware. You have to be conscious. We cannot let our lives go on autopilot. We are people born with a purpose in life. We're not just people who just go with the winds wherever the winds takes us. One day, Amir al-Mu'mineen, Imam Ali alayhi salam, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. He was walking by in the markets of Basra in Iraq, and he saw the people trading, buying, selling day and night. And he calls out to them, he says, "O slaves of this world, O laborers of its people, if you spend all day doing this and all night sleeping, in which you have no time to remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or work for your journey to the next world, how will you face Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the day which you have to return to Him?" He's talking about what happens in our world today. You wake up in the morning, you don't think of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you're rushing to work. You come back, you're thinking about something else. You're thinking about something else. The next thing, the next thing, the next thing. Next you know, the whole day is gone. The busy life keeps us so busy, sometimes we forget Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in our day. And this is what Imam Ali is referring to. And then the person comes to him and he says, "Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, if we don't work, what else should we do? How do we earn a hard living? You know, hard earn money, how do we live if we don't work?" He says, "I'm not talking about you working to earn your legitimate money that you need to survive. What I'm talking about is people who monopolize and hoard." And what does that mean? He means people who are greedy. People who are earning more than they need to earn, while that distracts them from remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whose sole purpose in life is to earn money, they forget about the rest of their life, the important duties that they have. He's talking about those people. He says it's okay. He's not talking about those who earn money because they need to live, support their families, have a good, comfortable life. He's talking about people who's obsessed with money. As I was talking about the other nights, the treadmill effect. You always want more and more and more. You will never be satisfied with money. You know, in fact, there's a study about millionaires. They went to the millionaires, they asked them, the person who has $1 million, what makes you happy? He says, $10 million. So he went to another group of millionaires who has $10 million. He asked them all, what makes you happy? 100 million. Onwards, onwards, onwards. They all wanted more. And that's the reality of life. And this is what this materialistic world right now is teaching us. To always want more and more and more. But our human hearts are not made to be satisfied by worldly things, only by Allah, the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is why this topic is of the utmost importance. Imam Ali Islam teaches us, ghafla, do not be heedless in this life. Do not just go through the motions. You are all born with a specific purpose in this life. And that is to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And along that journey, you become better people. Allah is Ar-Rahman. You start practicing mercy in your life. Allah is Al-Adil, the most just. You start practicing justice in your life. You start earning these qualities in your life and getting closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as you journey through life. And that is the sole purpose. Because humans have two choices. Allah gave us two options. We can either be like animals, as Allah says in the Holy Quran, but in the verse I described, He says you can be even worse than cattle. Why? Because even animals are aware of what they're doing. Have you ever tried to surprise an animal? They're always alert like this. But human beings, what do you see these days? I see kids walking down the streets, headphones in their ears. They'll get run over by a car, they won't even know what happens. All day, headphones in their ears, listening to God knows what. Hopefully it's Ziyarat Ashura, but we can only hope, right? But that's what you see all day, headphones in their ears, walking around. I see people at events, at family gatherings, headphones in ears, headphones in ears. Everyone's always on their phone. And what happens when your phone dies? And I see brothers smiling a lot, a little too much. Always on their phone. And this digital distraction in the modern age is detrimental to one's health. In fact, many studies in the Journal of American Medical Association show that people who spend more than 3 hours on their phone or using social media are at higher risk for mental health disorders. Now, if I asked anyone here to show me, because you know that phone tells you your screen time, right? And now everyone's looking away right now. The phone tells you how much, if you have an iPhone, it tells you use screen time option. It'll tell you what apps you used and how much time you spent. If you have an Android, your digital screen option also tells you how much you used. Would anyone want to volunteer and tell me how much time did they use on their phone? 2 hours per day? All right, you're right within the limit. That's a good brother. That's good. That's a very good answer. But the average is what 3 hours. Average for teens, 50% of teens spend more than 4 hours every single day. And I urge everyone to take advantage of this feature, right, on your phone. Use it, watch it week after week, and see how much time you're spending. I've seen some brothers, you have a very good crowd here, alhamdulillah. I was at another place and the brother showed me 12 hours one day and I was wondering, what is he doing? So that's a very good thing. But what does this do? It leads to a lot of mental health problems. Why? Because as I talked about before, social media is a distraction. You know what these companies use? These companies use psychologists who study human psychology. They know how to make it addictive to you. They know which motions, the motion of just scrolling like this with your thumb, it's a very addictive motion. And also likes, dopamine effects. These things get you addicted. All day people sit down for hours, they scroll. They're sitting in gatherings with their family, with their friends, they're outside, always on the phone. You're in a state of ghafla. You're in a state of complete ghafla. You don't know what's happening to you. A state of heedlessness. Like I mentioned, people can walk down the street and get hit by a car. They won't even know how they died. All they remember is what they were listening to. People who are obsessed with video games. I've seen brothers who forget to eat all day just because they're playing video games all day. This is what this world's doing to you. It's keeping you in a state of ghafla. And this ghafla, it's very detrimental for you because it's keeping you away from your true purpose. Our true purpose is not to be addicted to these digital gadgets or social media all day and just be heedless of life. We have to live a very purposeful life. You have to have a goal in life. What is your goal? You want to be a good individual, get close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, help your community, build your family, do good for the world. To do all of these things, it's not possible if you're spending 8 hours a day on your cell phone with social media, all night playing video games, or all day listening to music or whatnot. These things are not possible, but what happens? Why are these things being told to us, and why are kids growing up like this? This is the plan of shaitan. If shaitan cannot force you to do good, he'll distract you away from it. If he cannot make you do bad things, he's just going to distract you away from doing good things. While in itself, playing a video game all day may not be a sin, but what is it doing? It's distracting you from good things, exactly. Now do you understand how shaitan works? Shaitan works in every direction. He's scheming all day, all night, trying to get to you from every direction. You just don't understand. And these things keep you away from the important things in life. In fact, you know why the Romans in the Colosseums, they used to have gladiators, right? They used to fight one another. But why did this start? This started because they wanted to keep people entertained so they stay away from the problems of the empires at that time and what the kings were doing wrong and the problems they were facing. They wanted to give people a distraction. And this translated today now to all day watching whatever you may watch, cricket, sports. It's good to watch this, but in a certain limit. Do not exceed that limit. Do not use that as a tool to distract yourself from this world. That's not what life is about, being distracted from this world. We have to be aware of our life, aware of all day. What is taqwa? I was talking about taqwa tonight. Imam Ali alayhi salam, Amir al-Mu'mineen, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. He started his will with taqwa. Have consciousness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But how can you have consciousness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when you're distracted, you're in a heedless, all day doing something else? How are you aware of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? How are you aware of your duties to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? People are doing God knows what, being distracted day and night, forgetting their duties, forgetting their purpose in life. Does everyone have a purpose? Has anyone ever thought about this to themselves? What is my purpose in life? What was I made to do? And what does Allah want from me? And how can I help the Imam of our time? These are the questions everyone should ask themselves. Every single human being. Because this life is not promised. It's very short. And at the end, do you know what the people from the grave will say? Imam Ali al-Islam, one day he was walking in front of the graveyard. And he called out to the graveyard, the people in the grave. He says, "Oh people, oh lonely people, tell us what you have to tell us from the other side. But let me tell you from what's happening in this world. Your houses, your wealth that you worked your whole life for has all been distributed. There's nothing left. Your children have become orphaned. And your wives have been remarried. Everything that you worked your life for is gone. Now you tell us news from your side, O lonely people. O people of solitude." Because the grave is lonely. No one's going there with you, and nothing's going there with you, except your deeds. It says your deeds are like a companion in your grave. If you want company in your grave, do good in this world. Because all of us are ending up there. Is there anyone here who's not going to die? No, right? Okay, good. Alhamdulillah. But look, I'll tell you a story. And before I tell you the story, I want to finish what Imam Ali alayhi salam was saying. He tells the people this, and then he tells his companion, they ask him, what did they say? They said that if they can come back, all they would do is have taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because taqwa is the best provision in this life. And that's what they would do. The people of the grave, that's what they would do, have taqwa Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But you cannot have taqwa unless, what is taqwa? Someone answer this question. Being aware of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. See, this is why this brother only spends 2 hours on his phone. He knows the answers. He's paying attention. He's aware. That's the benefit of spending only 2 hours on your phone, guys. Being aware and conscious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is the benefit. And to be aware of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the opposite of being heedless. Right? So you cannot be in a state of ghafla and have taqwa. So what is the enemy of taqwa? Being heedless in this life. You cannot do that. Because all of us are meant to die. And then we have to learn how to spend our time and work for the next world. Because we're not taking anything with us in this life. You know, there was once Angel Azrael. He was once asked, did you ever feel sad or regret when he took someone's life? As you know, Azrael is the angel of death who comes at the time to take your life and your soul. He says yes. And 2 occasions, I'll mention one of them. He says, there was once an individual, a king, a conqueror of lands, who spent his entire life building a kingdom, which one he wanted to replicate Jannah on earth. He spent his entire life building this kingdom. But he did not want to enter into this kingdom until it was finished. So as it was finished, and as he put one foot into that kingdom that he made, the order from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala came. And I had to take his life. This individual spent his entire life working, distracted from the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But the death came when he least expected it. Because that's how death comes. Does anyone know when they're going to die? That's, inshallah. Hopefully you live that long, brother. But the day of Qiyamah is a day we'll come back to life, actually. But if inshallah Allah gives you the life, brother, inshallah it's possible, you know. Nabi lived a very long life, so. But no one knows. But there's a fact. We know we are going to die. And that's what we should recall and remember always in our minds and hearts. That the day will come when our life will go away. And we'll call out to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us one more chance, one more sujood, one more chance to say astaghfirullah, one more chance to do a good deed. But then it'll be too late. You'll be in your grave by yourself alone. Only your deeds you would have taken with you in the next world. Nothing else. And that's very important for us to understand. You know, there's a story narrated of a king. I don't want to mention his name because this story may not be verified, but the lesson in itself is very important. There was a king who had amassed a lot of wealth in this life. And he says he's about to die and his funeral is about to happen. So he says, I have 3 wishes. I want all my wealth on my procession to the way to the graveyard to be shown. Number 1. Number 2, I want my hands hanging out from the coffin. And number 3, I want the doctors, the best doctors in the country, to carry the coffin. So they asked him, they did this, but they asked him, why did you have such odd wishes, O king? He says, I want all the doctors, the best doctors in town, to carry my coffin because I want to show the world that no one can save you when it's time to go. No one can save you from death. I want my hands to be empty because I want to show the people that we came here with nothing, we're leaving with nothing. And I want all my wealth to be displayed so people can see that this is what I've accumulated, but I'm taking nothing. This is the lesson of this life. So what does that teach you? Work for the next world as much as you can, as with little time you have left in this life. Because death will come when you least expect it. Remember this always. Remember that always. Do not ever think. Being in a state of hedonism is also thinking that you're going to live forever. Shaitan does this to you. He makes you think, I can become better 10 years from now. I'll do ziyarat when I'm older. I'll do hajj when I'm older. I'll become a better Muslim when I'm older. I'll wear hijab when I'm older. I'll do this when I'm older. I'll do this when I'm older. You may never get older. And then what happens? You leave this world with nothing. It's too late. So remember this. But how should we spend our time? How do we avoid being in a state of ghafla? You know, the Imams have told us, especially Imam Musa al-Qadim alayhi salam, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. They have told us how to spend our days, how to divide our days into 4 parts. Number 1, in the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, doing acts of worship, maybe studying for Islam, learning Islam, doing salat, doing dua, doing istighfar, dhikr, whatever it may be, getting closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and worship for Him. Number 2, doing work for this life. That means if you have a job, earning for your family. If you have to take care of the house, take care of the house, your family, your children. And number 3 is when you have the chance to play video games, you have the plans to go out, have fun. Halal ways of seeking pleasure. 3 parts. And the 4th part is that if you have a community, spending time with mu'min people around you. Building that community. So that's how you suspend your day. So if you have 12 hours in a day, no more than 3 hours should be spent on what? Social media, exactly. Or halal entertainment or pleasure. Divide your day like this. That is the way to having a successful day. And every day, if you measure your day and see how you spent it. Remember, they says, what did the Imam say? He says, those who do not keep an account of themselves are not one of us. Account for your days. See how you spend your time. And that's how you can avoid being heedless. Because if you're spending every single day, 1/3 of your day to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you will never be heedless. Remember this. And that's how we can avoid being heedless in this life. And I'll end with one final story. This is a story of a man who worked his whole life. He used to make houses, build houses. He was a very good designer. You can just call him an interior designer for the sake of understanding the story. And it was come time for retirement. Retirement came, he worked his entire life, and now he just wants to retire and get out of work. So what happens? He goes to his boss and says, I'm going to retire now. That's it, I had enough. The boss says, all right, I give you one final thing to do. Build one final house. But for this, you have all the tools of the company at your disposal. Use anything that you may need. Everything is yours. Consider this your final project. He does this, but he's in a rush to get out of there. He builds a house with a shaky foundation. It's not a great house. And he's a great housemaker, but he builds the worst house he's probably ever made just because he's in a rush. He's distracted with the world. He just wants to get out of there. He had all the tools at his disposal. Remember that. Key thing to remember. At the end, he goes and gives the keys and says, I'm out. I'm done. The boss calls him back. He says, come back. This house is a gift for you, for your retirement. Now, just like that, we in this life have been given all the tools by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make our final house. And which house is that? The house in our akhirah. Do not be in a rush to get away from that. Use all the tools to build your final house. Because this life is short. You know, people spend their life. Who has a 401k? People who are working have 401ks, right? For those who don't know what 401k is, it's a savings plan for your retirement. But what's your real retirement? Are you planning for your akhirah? You put away money every single week for your 401k, right? But are you putting away deeds every single day for your akhirah? You're not. Think about that, brothers and sisters. Because you never know when your time will come. And with that, let us raise our hands and ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make sure we are never from the ghafilin. We are never amongst those who are heedless in this life. We are always steadfast and loyal in the path of Amir al-Mu'mineen and Ahl al-Bayt. And we ask Allah to make us amongst the best companions amongst Sahib Asr wa Zaman, Ashla Ta'ala Fajr Sharif. And we ask Allah to heal all those who need healing in this world, to answer the prayers of all the oppressed, especially the people of Gaza and all the Muslim lands across the world, and to grant us His unlimited mercy and forgiveness in His holy month of Shahr Ramadan. Salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
السلام عليك رسول الله السلام عليك نبي الله السلام عليك خاتم النبيين السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته السلام عليك أمير المؤمنين سيد الوصيين قائد الغر المحجلين السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته السلام عليك فاطمة الزهراء بنت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم السلام عليك حسن المجتبى السلام عليك بقية المؤمنين ورحمة الله وبركاته السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله الحسين أرواح التي هلت بفنائك عليك مني سلام الله عبد ما بقية وبقيل ليل والنهار ولا جعل الله والآخر الأحد مني لزيارتكم السلام على الحسين عليه السلام السلام علي بن الحسين السلام عليك يا أصحاب الحسين السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته السلام عليك يا زينب كبرى السلام عليها السلام يا أبا الفضل العباس يا ابن أمير المؤمنين السلام عليك يا غريب الغرباء معين ضعفاء الفقراء السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته السلام عليك مولانا صاحب العصر الزمان الأمان 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 السلام عليك خليفة الرحمن وشريك القرآن أجل الله تعالى فرجك وسهل الله تعالى مخرجك وظهورك ورحمة الله وبركاته बिस्मिल्लाह रहमान रहीम अल्लाहुम्मा कुल्ले वलियकल हुज्जत इब्नुल हसन सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वला बाही फी हाज़िहि सा व फी कुल्ले सा वलियन व हाफ़िज़न व क़ाइदन व नासिरा व दलीलन व आइना हत्ता तुस्किनहु अर्ज़का तवा व तुमतियाहु فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين